Hi, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from RicoScores, and as you see in the title, experts predict the Washington Commanders to potentially target and land Chargers running back Austin Ekeler in free agency. He will be an unrestricted free agent. Well, as of right now, he is. Just like how on our end, Curtis Samuel, Kendall Fuller, Antonio Gibson, Cameron Curl, Joey Sly, just to name a few, Cleek Hudson, all of those guys are unrestricted free agents on our end. It's the same thing for Austin Ekeler on the Chargers end. And right now, of course, take it with a grain of salt because we were one of the top landing spots for him last offseason, and we see how that went. He ended up going back to the Chargers on a one-year deal, and it wasn't the money that he wanted, but for one reason or another, he ended up staying with the Chargers for another year instead of going to us, even though we were originally predicted to land him. It was not even just like a Pro Football Focus thing, like an article like this one. It was like an actual report that it seems to be we may be interested and all of that stuff. It seemed to be mutual interest, and nothing happened. So will we actually strike fast and get it done this year? Of course, we got to talk about his market value, potentially how much money he could be looking for on a per year basis. What would be his cap hit? Can we afford it? How much cap space do we have? Can we afford him and some of the other top free agents at bigger positions of need? Because I wouldn't say running back is like a huge position of need compared to like edge rusher, tackle, linebacker, and things like that. So could we potentially fill those needs in free agency and still have enough to afford Austin Ekeler and re-sign some of the players that we want to bring back from our 2023 Commander squad? Because we're losing a lot of starters in free agency this offseason. I'm warning you now. Is it worth the risk as well? With him missing games every now and then, let's talk about all of that and more. But before we do, make sure you still follow that like button, still follow the subscription button, and still follow the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. Again, I just did the Dan Quinn mock draft. I'm going to work on a Cliff Kingsbury theme one as well. I also really want to work on a trade back one. I may do that before I even do the Cliff Kingsbury one, because I see from a lot of people that they want to see what a trade back would look like, where we just basically stick with Sam Howell one more year and we address offensive line. We address a lot of major needs that we have by trading back slightly, but still getting an elite player within the top 7, top 5 of the draft. I'm curious about that as well. So we're going to do a trade back mock draft, and any little thing that the Commanders have going on, I will update y'all on all of that and more. So make sure you stay tuned. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get to this video. Let's get it. All right, so this is coming from Pro Football Focus. They were doing an article on like the best free agency fits, and we have another free agency fit that I'll probably talk about in another video at tight end that we could dive into and do the exact same breakdown that we're doing on Austin Ekeler. We could do it for that player as well, as far as market value, how much they may potentially be asking for in free agency per year, cap hits, all of that type of stuff, how they fit in the current scheme that we have going on. We got to talk about that with Austin Ekeler, of course, today as well. How does he fit in a Cliff Kingsbury air raid system? Well, I'm gonna go ahead and let you know now before we even get to that part of the video. He's perfect for it. But again, just let's go back to the article. Let's start from step 1. The actual graphic on Twitter says, should the Commanders target Austin Ekeler? And when they listed Austin Ekeler, they said his best fits and most likely landing spots that make the most sense are the Carolina Panthers and the Washington Commanders. If I'm Austin Ekeler and I'm looking at both organizations, I would prefer to go to the Commanders. I mean, even just Josh Harris versus David Tepper alone, I would prefer to go to the Commanders. I'm not gonna lie. But at the same time, the full breakdown from Pro Football Focus's point of view from Brad Spielberger, who actually wrote this article, he said, quote, Antonio Gibson is a free agent, and while Brian Robinson's pass catching volume increased significantly in the second season, perhaps he forms a duo with Robinson as the early down bruiser and Austin Ekeler as the late down pass catcher who can break off chunk gains through the air and make life easier for a rookie quarterback. So for those reasons that he already listed, it makes a lot of sense. It seems like a match made in heaven for both parties. We're going to do a deeper dive into that. But before we even get excited and we talk about how he could help Cliff Kingsbury's offense go to another level, how Cliff Kingsbury's offense can get greatness out of him and take him back to his 2021 season self type of thing, let's look at the market value. How much could he potentially be commanding and demanding from teams in free agency? Well, right now, SpotTrack estimates that he'll want, on average, $7.4 million per year. Now, of course, that is annual. They're saying overall it'll probably be like a 3-year, $22.367 million deal. And you know how typically these deals go. It's usually backloaded more than anything else. So say if we get them on like $7.4 million per year average, I feel like the first year may be like 3 to 4 million. The second year may be like 7. And then that third year will be the one where all of the money really hits and he will become like an $11 million cap hit then, or a $12 million. There's always a consistent increase, well, usually in contracts. Most of them are usually backloaded and it just goes up and up and up each season. So that's more so, to be realistic, how much of a cap hit he would probably be this year if we were to actually go get him. It probably wouldn't be 7.4 million. It'll probably be less than that, but still, just on average, it would be 7.4 million. And moving forward, just assuming, even though it rarely happens like this, but assuming that every single year of his contract, if we signed him, were $7.4 million against the cap, then we can start to do calculations around that. Well, of course, also SpotTrack gets these calculations and they project market value. And of course, it's not 100%. This is just pure projection. They're using other running backs in the market that are like similar in age, that have signed contracts recently, similar in stats and production, and they kind of put all of that up in the one pot, mix it up, and then come out with this annual value prediction for Austin Ekeler. Because like James Conner, when he signed his, he was 26 years old. His was a 3-year deal worth $21 million over the course of the deal, $7 million per year. Aaron Jones was 26 when he signed his for a 4-year deal worth $12 million per year. Jamal Williams was 27 years old and signed a 3-year deal worth $4 million per year. Then Joe Mixon was 26 years old and signed a 2-year deal for an average of $5.75 million per year against the cap. And so on averages of length of contracts, that's 3. That's what they project Austin Ekeler to get this offseason. And then overall value, $23.1 million, slightly less than what they project Austin Ekeler to get. And then the average of everybody's annual salary is $7.7 million, which is a little bit more than what they're projecting Austin Ekeler to get per year. And again, then also the average age per signing is 26.3. Austin Ekeler, on the other hand, will be 28 years old, which is fairly interesting there, but I don't think it matters too much. But you do got to start to watch running backs. Their value only diminishes over time. So he's already on to his 2nd contract. This will be his 3rd. And I don't know how much money he could truly demand out there, even though I still believe he's a great player. Again, we're going to talk about him through the lens of a Cliff Kingsbury offense and why he could be electric for this Washington Commanders team if we would actually go and get him. But even with all of that, it's just really hard after Todd Gurley getting hurt, Ezekiel Elliott falling off of a cliff, and it's just really hard to convince NFL teams, no matter how good you are at being a running back, that you deserve a certain amount of money, man. There's a certain limit to how much they're willing to pay you. I mean, we're already judging people prematurely when they draft a running back anywhere in the 1st round. We're already like, oh yeah, that was a waste of a draft. Well, I'm not, but most people are. The general consensus is that even when the Lions took Jahmyr Gibbs when they took him in the 1st round last year, people were looking at them like they were tripping. And look how helpful he was to the offense. Now, granted, that's draft though. That's a way younger player. When we're talking about older guys like 28 years old, that's ancient in running back years, the way that the NFL is working right now. For an offensive lineman, even for DBs, for wide receivers, for quarterbacks especially, 28 years old is prime, and even for like especially quarterbacks, that's really young. But for a running back, that's ancient. And there's really no other position in football where 28 years old, you're starting to be like, I don't know, maybe the next closest thing is linebacker. But even linebacker 28, you're not double taking like you would with a running back. So just to look at his previous contract as well, he's coming off a $7.7 million contract, well, $7.75 million. So ultimately, he would actually be getting less money per year than what he just got paid in 2023 alone. Now, annually, throughout his contract, it was actually $6.125 million since the contract that he signed in 2020 after his rookie deal, the extension that he signed. It was a 4-year contract worth $24 million over the course of the whole thing. Again, an average of like $6 million. So right here, he would actually be making more money on average than over the course of a contract the spanning a few years, more than he's ever made in his career. But at the same time, he would go potentially, if we're just going to say, again, the logic is if you backload the contract and it's a $7.4 million contract annually, that first year will probably be like $4 or $5, maybe $6 million. That would be less than what he made in 2023 and potentially even less than what he made in 2022. Is he willing to do that? Would he require the contract to be more front loaded, or would he just want a really good 1-year deal and a chance to prove himself? Doubt it. As a running back, if you're a running back, you can get a 4-year deal at age 28. You go take that. They don't have much leverage there, man. I mean, I remember this past offseason, apparently all of the running backs in the NFL, all of the top guys were starting to create a group chat and were like, we just need to go on strike and just say none of us will sign any of these contracts until y'all up the money and raise the market value for all of us. And then everybody just started folding one by one. Saquon signed. He did his franchise tag. Austin Ekeler signed for only a little bit more than what he was originally getting paid. Like, he wanted a really big contract. And he decided to stay with the Chargers after all they did was add an additional $1.7 million in incentives to his contract that he already had. And he was like, I guess I'll take that. I mean, just running back left and right over and over again. They just started folding. The collusion just completely died down. And after that, I feel like they're even less likely to even try it this year after the way it failed last year. So we may be able to get them for very cheap, maybe even cheaper than that with the way the market value works for running backs. It's sad, but it is what it is right now, man. It really is. And Eugene Shin already said that his logic is, and he's the analytics guy, don't even try to sign a running back to too much money. We're not even going to sit here and offer crazy money. He prefers to draft a running back higher in the draft than most people believe. Like, he would have been the type to get that Jahmyr Gibbs pick that the Lions did in the first round, or a Bijan Robinson for the Falcons. He's more likely to do that than to go and pay a 28-year-old Austin Ekeler. But who knows? Adam Peters is the one mainly running the show, even though Eugene Shin is going to have a little bit of say-so, a little bit of input, but you just never know. And then on top of all of that, he had a pretty disappointing season this past season. I mean, it wasn't bad. He missed a couple of games due to injuries, but not a lot, not like a typical running back does. But he did see a pretty big decrease in stats compared to his usual stats. Like, if you're looking at 2023, he had 628 rushing yards and 438 receiving yards for a total of over 1,000 yards. And that's still good, but 2021, he had 911 running yards just alone, plus 647 receiving. Then 2022, he had 915 rushing yards with 722 receiving yards. And after that ridiculous season of having over 1,600 yards himself, just by himself, he was literally the Chiefs offense. I mean, the Chargers offense, my fault. After that season is when he still couldn't get the big time contract he wanted. Now, after a down year, after also missing a couple of games, I don't think he has much leverage. And he may actually end up signing for something less than that $7.4 million projected annually. I'm not going to lie. He may just stand firm, stand his ground on his own, and is like, nah, man, when in doubt, I'll just go back to the Chargers if nobody's going to give me the money I want. I can see that happening because that's basically what happened last year. But who knows, man? Maybe he'll look at what the Commanders have going on, Cliff Kingsbury, his offense, and how he could get back to his old self being explosive. I mean, not even old self. We're just talking about 2022. As recent as that, when he was having an MVP caliber season. That's the type of season statistically that if it weren't this current modern NFL where quarterbacks are pretty much almost guaranteed to win MVP every year, he probably would have won MVP like 20 years ago with those stats. So it's not like he's far removed from it. I know he's 28, but at 27 years old, he was going crazy like that. So it's positives and negatives. It's give or take. I still don't exactly know how much leverage he would have. And I'm pretty sure the Commanders will probably be like, man, we have a certain number for you. And if you're trying to go over that number, we're good. We'll just re-sign Antonio Gibson. We'll draft a guy, whatever. We'll figure it out. But we're not about to pay a running back. When we're trying to rebuild this entire team, pay a running back $8 million per year or more. I highly doubt. They may not even be willing to do $7.4 million. But again, back to Antonio Gibson, you got to remember, we do have him. And he is an unrestricted free agent that we can re-sign. But at the same time, he's 3 years younger than Austin Ekeler. And his market value says that he's estimated to make only half the money that Austin Ekeler is projected to make. So even after the Austin Ekeler discount potentially, Antonio Gibson is projected to make half of the money that you would probably end up paying Austin Ekeler at 3 years younger as well. Now, I know he's not proven, But at $3.6 million per year annually, that's a whole $0.2 million less than half of what Austin Ekeler is projected to get. The Commanders, I can easily see them being like, man, with that electric and freakish athleticism, I think Cliff Kingsbury is just going to come in and be like, man, re-sign Antonio Gibson, give him something like $4 million per year or less. And then with his athleticism, just to go back to that, I mean, being built like a middle linebacker and running a 4.3, 4.36, 4.39 or something like that is absolutely ridiculous. This man is probably like double the size of Austin Ekeler, and at the same time probably faster. So I know Austin Ekeler is more proven, but Antonio Gibson is cheaper with a higher ceiling and younger. I can see the Commanders again, for all leverage purposes, being like, hey, Austin Ekeler, we'll meet you at this price, but if you want to go above that, we're good. We'll figure it out after that. And also, with all of the major needs that we have, with edge rusher or linebacker being far bigger priorities in free agency than running back, even with the most cap space in the NFL, can we actually afford him for real? Because you're looking at Josh Allen, the edge rusher from the Jaguars. Annual value of 23.9. That's his market value right now. So probably like $24 million a year against the cap, basically. Then you're looking at Brian Burns from the Carolina Panthers. An annual value of like $22 million against the cap per year. Can we afford that plus like a Patrick Queen at linebacker? We have a huge linebacker need. That's why in my mock drafts, if I don't take linebacker within the first 3 rounds, just assume that I got one in free agency like a Patrick Queen, because we need linebacker bad. Even if we do re-sign Khaleke Hudson and Cody Barton, we still need linebacker, and those guys are unrestricted free agents right now. Currently, the only linebacker on roster is like Jamin Davis, and he's on IR and having legal problems. So Patrick Queen at $18.5 million per year market value actually sounds like a great idea for us right now. And then we also need receivers for this air raid system that loves 4 wide receiver sets, including having to re-sign a Curtis Samuel to possibly a projected market value of $11.5 million per year. So there's money right there we got to allocate towards that. And then, so basically, to do like an example or like a scenario, if we were to go out and get Brian Burns from Carolina, the edge rusher, linebacker Patrick Queen from the Ravens, then you throw in Austin Ekeler instead of an Antonio Gibson from the Chargers, and then just for example and scenario purposes, you also re-sign Curtis Samuel, we would only have like $24.4 million in cap space left to do everything we still have to do, which means more re-signings from 2023 Commanders players that are now free agents right now. You would still probably want to go and sign guys at other positions, and maybe it'll be some bargain bin shopping, but still, we still need to go get more depth at like wide receiver, even after you re-sign Curtis Samuel, at DB, at offensive line, all of that type of stuff. And then on top of all of that, you still have to pay the draft class. But at the same time, though, with $24.4 million left in cap space after you sign Brian Burns, Patrick Queen, Austin Ekeler, and bring back Curtis Samuel, you still have $24.4 million. That's still more cap space than half of the NFL, which is crazy. When you're looking at the NFL right now, that would take us from number 1 in cap space to still 17th. More cap space than half of the NFL, above the Kansas City Chiefs, who have $23 million. And then you have a lot of teams out here in the negatives right now. The Chargers themselves, I don't know how they're going to pay Austin Ekeler. They're going to find a way. These teams that are severely in the negatives, but they have negative $44 million worth of cap space right now, with Austin Ekeler not even counting towards that yet. He's an unrestricted free agent. He's not even in those 2024 cap space projections. If they were to sign him, they would go up, according to the market value that he has, up to negative $51.5 million in cap space right now. And teams always find a way to restructure contracts, cap cuts and things like that. They'll find a way to get to neutral / slightly above. But right now, basically my point is, if the Chargers are somehow potentially going to find a way to keep him, and they have negative $44 million worth of cap space, why wouldn't we be able to do that with $83 million in cap space, $83.5 million in cap space, the most in the NFL by far, by at least almost $10 million. If we can't, if the Chargers can, how come we can't? And again, you can sign Brian Burns, Patrick Queen, Austin Ekeler, and re-sign Curtis Samuel and still have more cap space than half of the rest of the NFL. I'm telling you, man, this free agency period, if Adam Peters wants it to be fun, if he wants it to be flashy, he can. I'm not exactly sure if he will be, because Adam Peters has shown that he is willing to make splash signings and do blockbuster trades and things like that. But the problem is he willing to do that as his first year as a GM for a team? Because again, he loves to make the big signings. He's done big trades, Christian McCaffrey, all of that type of stuff. But it seems more like a we'll spend all of this money, all of this draft capital to get a guy that basically completes a team that's already a contender. Like, that's one of our last couple of weaknesses remaining. Let's get a guy that's elite at that, and we don't have to worry about it. Now our team is definitely ready to compete for a Super Bowl, and the strategy's been working. Look at them. They're in a Super Bowl right now. But with him preferring to build through the draft, that may take a year or two before we start having a lot of fun in free agency. So we'll see how that goes. But then again, he may be even more aggressive coming in immediately to get this whole next regime jump started. Because having all of that cap space is not necessarily like you have to spend it, but it's really nice to have it. And even though, again, I feel like logically, X's and O's wise, I feel like his first year, he may not just come out the gate swinging in free agency, but with us having the most cap space in the NFL, don't be surprised if he actually does end up doing it. Plus, Austin Ekeler, when healthy, is almost a perfect fit for this Cliff Kingsbury air raid system. I think Antonio Gibson could eat in as well. And I think he would have a career best in stats with Kingsbury as his offensive coordinator because he was underutilized by Scott Turner and definitely by Eric Bieniemy. But if you want to go with the slightly more expensive, slightly older, but also more proven receiving back in an Austin Ekeler, it makes a lot of sense, especially now that he's nearly basically having half off discount compared to what he was asking. Because last season, he was projected to get what, like $15 million a year, 14 per year. Now it's only like 7.4. So technically it is like a half off discount compared to last offseason. And all you had to do was wait an extra season to film having a not a disappointing season. When you still have more than 1,000 yards overall, you still did really well. But compared to what he's used to doing, last season was a pretty disappointing season. So you just wait a year and that price gets cut in half and makes even more sense now than it did last year when people were reporting and projecting us to land him. So if there were ever a time to go get Austin Ekeler, it would be this year. Again, I'm not entirely too confident that it will happen for reasons I've already stated. But again, perfect fit because Cliff Kingsbury's offense asks running backs to run routes more than they're staying back there to block. He's probably would catch more passes than rushes that he would actually carry on the ground. Like, he would receive the ball through the air more than directly from the quarterback as a handoff with the offense that Cliff Kingsbury wants to run. And at the same time, Cliff Kingsbury likes to run the ball way more than any other air raid system does. But Austin Ekeler would definitely get back to his 2021-2022 self. With and I mean, think about it too, potentially a top 3 draft quarterback like a Jayden Daniels, Caleb Williams, or Drake May with their big arms and mobility. Defenses got to worry about that. And then you got to worry about all of these receivers running everywhere. You got to my favorite part about the air raid system is that defenses have to cover all 100 yards every play. Well, really, realistically, like all 80 yards every play. You have to account for all of it, which opens up the box, makes it very light. Receivers running everywhere. Dual threat quarterback with a big arm that's a threat to throw it deep downfield, but also run himself. The running back, like an Austin Ekeler, would be like the last thing the defense is worried about. Like, who are we? We cannot get beat deep 80 yards. We cannot let this quarterback get outside the pocket and run for 30. We can't let him throw to Terry McLaurin easily over the field on a post for like 50. Those are like the primary things you stop as a defense. And then if you somehow are able to stop all of that, the last thing you're thinking about is honestly Austin Ekeler out of the backfield. And that would be your death wish right there. And that's why Austin Ekeler would ball out in this offense. And I think, honestly, looking at what the Chargers may have, even with Justin Herbert, but all of those aging wide receivers and their offense just didn't look that great last year, and how optimistic I am about the future of the Commanders, Austin Ekeler may look at us and be like, man, I may take my chances with that. Let me try to jump on this Cliff Kingsbury bandwagon before it's too late. And they go out and have an explosive 2024 year, and now they're a little bit more bougie on their end type of situation. And again, I just want to reemphasize that he was listed as a potential free agency landing last season with us, and it didn't happen. Pro Football Focus themselves, the same organization that has us talking about this video this year, put out an article last year saying that we should go get Austin Ekeler, and that they felt like it would make the most sense, and we still didn't do it. So maybe this time is different, but I do want to reemphasize the fact that this is not the first time this has been said. So just because people are saying Austin Ekeler to the Commanders makes sense does not mean it's automatically going to happen. But would I love for it to happen? Would I be excited about it, especially at less than $8 million per year annual value? please sign me up, man. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned to all of the content. Again, I'm working on more mock drafts. We're about to be pretty mock draft heavy over like the next week and a half because I still got to do a Cliff Kingsbury one. We just did the Dan Quinn one, but I also really want to prioritize a trade back one because a lot of people seem very curious about that. And of course, I'm also working on a film session. It's gonna be like an hour-long plus breakdown of Cliff Kingsbury's offense where I'm gonna show you actual clips and evidence like to you. You'll see the play that I'm talking about, like actual Arizona Cardinals film, and then compare it to what Terry McLaurin has done for the Commanders, how we can get the most out of him and things like that. Parallels. We're gonna look at some maybe like Jayden Daniels, LSU, Caleb Williams, USC. It's like gonna be like a full in-depth film session. Stay tuned for all of that. And I have so many other video ideas that I'm working on, so stay tuned and I'm gonna update y'all on every little thing that's going on. I definitely want to do a video updating y'all on some of the requests we've made out there for potential coordinators to go under Kingsbury and Joe Witt Jr., Dan Quinn, and all of those guys. But if I find time, I will get that video out there for the guys that are potentially candidates. But you know for a fact that once we hire some people, I'll definitely do a video breakdown on that. So stay tuned for all of that. I'm gonna catch y'all later. Appreciate y'all. I'm out.